Hi everyone, welcome to the CCCX update, and on this edition I'm pleased to welcome back my first ever returning interviewing guest, Don Haddaway. Don and I have known each other for a little while and are always talking about issues that are coming up within the CX marketplace. For those of you who don't know him, and if you've been following the CCCX update or the YouTube channel, I'd be surprised if there's many of you. Don's been an expert in the field for over 30 years, consulting with businesses at C-level on their CX strategies, and recently was one of the panel speakers at the Sabio Disrupt event here in London, which we'll be touching on in a minute. What Don and I have been talking about most recently, though, and what he's here to help us all understand a bit more about, is how we can properly position a business case for conversational, not just speech, analytics investment within your contact center. And we're going to go through the usual questions like we do. But Don, first of all, thank you again for joining me.
No, thank you for having me back. I had no idea I was the only returnee. So is that is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know.
Only so far, I hope. Anyway, maybe everyone else. No one's returning the calls. I don't know.
Right, yeah, they go in, nobody else comes back out. Yeah,
you're going to start a trend. I promise you, you're going to start a trend.
Okay.
And we're going to go through, so obviously we're going to talk about Sabio Disrupt. We've been doing a little bit of that just before we started the recording here, but also looking at the number of companies, because something that I took away from a previous event to that was the number of companies that aren't even using conversational analytics at the moment, and why that might be the case. Also, if technology and CX leaders are thinking of making a business case for that investment, what they need to be considering and what they need to be thinking about from a return on investment point of view. And what the tools out there now, these Gen 3 tools, are actually capable of. So how they can be including that functionality in the business case. And lastly, if there are any standout tools that really appeal to you, maybe a controversial one there, because obviously you work across a broad range of suppliers. Independent, exactly. That's how we like it. So we'll jump straight in. First off then, Don, so how did the panel discussion go at Sabio Disrupt last week, and what were the standout points for you?
Well, certainly the event last week was actually really good. So it's great with sort of several different consultants on there, Nets and Jason, etc. But plus a number of customers from completely different sectors. I think there was healthcare, there was food retail, etc. And medical, I think. But the point is that what we found, there were a number of underlying things that was true pretty much to everybody. Certainly from a tech point of view, yes, the dreaded AI came up sort of numerous times. But actually what I found with a lot of the stuff at the Sabio event, it was very much more what I would call human-centric. So with people concerned about agent capabilities, how agents are being helped, how agents are being assisted, how people feel going through those different interactions, etc., and what sort of tooling was there to understand what people were going through as they went through those different interactions. So from, I think it was from Atom Bank, they're deploying technology in a fairly low-key way, not at the front line, not in your face, so human people answering calls. But they do have service automation, but they're looking very much more at how to make this a much more human-centric experience. And certainly from my perspective, I think that's something I've always leaned on, in that technology is an enabler. That's an old sort of a bit of a trope these days, but it's true in that you've got a lot of technology that you can use, but how you use it, where it's used appropriately, is the key thing. Rather than just, AI, let's get it in there, generative, let's make chatbots, let's do the whole thing. And I think people were shying away from that. You alluded to that earlier with regards to, I know our topic is really about the whole sort of conversational analytics, but it's another side of the same coin, where you're talking about understanding or how you make services available to people, either through IVRs or through chatbots or through NLU integration or NLU experiences, and how you weave all that together so that people don't feel they're trapped in a particular sort of never-ending hell of select one, select two, or something that's point blank does not understand them. So yeah, in terms of the focus, human-centric, much more about the experience rather than the measurement of what people are going through, and just trying to, so human centric.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that message came through. Employee engagement, agent well-being, general well-being. I think that all came through in a really nice way, not in an overly fluffy sort of way, but in a practical way. And talk about return on investment was throughout the day as well. And actually. What you're saying there and what we experienced there actually links up nicely with what we're here to talk about. And it was at a previous event. It was at the Future of Customer Contact event at the same location, a brewery in London that I went to, that this really stood out to me. There was a lot of talk about conversational analytics, and I was surprised at how many companies, even today, are not, haven't implemented it. And do you think that's because there's a misunderstanding of what these Gen 3 solutions offer? And if so, what do you think it is that people are missing about what they offer?
Well, so just to reverse in time a little bit, and you sort of dropped in the Gen 3 thing, and really just to sort of set the scene a little bit in that. So speech analytics has been around a long time, quite some time. So the capability for a machine to understand or to interpret what's being said has been around a long time. I think probably about 2 or 3 years ago, the rise of these machines in terms of how they're being used to analyze conversations, to try and determine intent, to try and determine sort of how people are feeling, happy face, sad face, good call, bad call type thing. But if you look at those platforms, what I would call the Gen 1 platforms, which are the early day platforms, which were pretty much lexical only. It literally is just listening to the words, spotting the words, adding those up. You've got a lot of these words, that's a good thing. You've got a lot of these words, it's a bad thing. When you start to get towards Gen 2, and the problem is, in that Gen 1 world, people promised a lot of stuff. Look, we can do everything. We can analyze 100% of the call. Here's a word cloud. Look at that. Oh, yeah, look, that word came up a lot. So people are not very happy. But the trouble is that the words on their own mean very little. It's really about how they said, the context of what they said, what happened before, what's going to happen afterwards, or what historically has happened to people is the key thing, not what they say at that point in time. That is important, but otherwise it's all out of context. So when you look at Gen 1 platforms, great step forward, understand what people say, have a clue about what was said, have a clue about how often it's said, and have a clue about which channel or which service it's said on. But if you then look at Gen 2, you had, and this is probably maybe 2 years ago or less, you had lexical and acoustic. So it's about not just how loudly it's said, it's the context of it. It is understanding intonations, silences, and various other things. So it's not just, okay, yes, you do have a transcription or you've got a bunch of words, but you also have how things are said, how that word, the cadence, like, with Shakespeare with iambic pentameter, how those words are broken up, where the spaces lie, whether there's more emphasis or anything. So you can use exactly the same words, can have 5 different meanings depending on where you put those breakpoints. And the key thing that you had there was that people were promised the world. Yeah, look, you can do everything, you'll understand everything, etc. The big problem with those Gen 1 and Gen 2 platforms as well was that they generate vast amounts of data. So you can get, oh yeah, I've got all this stuff, I've measured it, right, what am I going to look at? Don't know, I'll run a query. So you run a query based on what you think or what, and there's actually got a term, and the term is survivorship bias, or it's just bias. But survivorship bias is so where somebody is looking for a particular thing or think they know what the answer to the problem is, they'll go looking for that one thing. And the reason it's called survivorship bias, this goes back to World War II, where there's a guy called Abraham Wald. He looked after bombers that came back from bombing raids over Germany or from wherever else, and looked at the damage on those planes. And they said, right, okay, there's loads of holes, we'll stick more bits on those bits where the holes are. Whereas actually what he surmised was that people were looking in the wrong place. If the plane came back, it was damaged, it was actually okay. It's the ones that didn't come back So it's the missing data you're looking for, not the data that's presented to you.
Yeah.
It's very much the same in this world. It's the people who don't tell you things or don't say things. It's what not said, it's what's implied that's important. So trying to get away from bias, because all of those Gen 1 and Gen 2 systems enforce or reinforce bias, because you think, I know what, I'll go look for this or I'll look for that. Gen 3 is really where things come to life, and they've only really come about in the last year and a half, maybe year, where these are 100% AI platforms, not just very large language models, because there are a lot of different types of AI models out there. But those Gen 3 platforms, which have 100% capture, they are using lexical, they're using acoustic, they're unsupervised. You don't have to train them, just let them go. And more importantly, how things are found is really important, because rather than you say, I want to go look for this, or I want to go look for that, or I've built 20 different queries I want to look for, actually the machine will tell you that, well, here are a number of things that have occurred, here are a number of things here are a number of common topics, almost heat maps. And there's another topic which we need to have, which is about data visualization, because this is a big thing. How you visualize data helps you to go look for stuff. The machine will serve things up to you, it will look for meaning, it will look for content, it will look for reasons, etc. And it's letting those machines do its thing. Whereas in the past, people have really leaned on these, not got a lot of result, or there was massive effort, but actually the difference, maybe a couple of percent points here or a couple of percent points there weren't vastly different from manual, because you still had to draw through stuff manually. Whereas the new platforms, very, very much more sort of true automated tools that highlight significantly what's happening with the customer, what the customer experience, emotion in terms of more than just happy face, sad face, vulnerability, etc. And also the context of it, because that also captures data which is related to so the metadata, so stuff from CRMs, stuff from systems of record, etc., and tying all those bits together. So that's where the future's going, and I think that unlocks a huge amount of potential that it wasn't there before, but it was difficult to get to before. Now that stuff is being surfaced automatically. Right, that was a really long answer.
No, I really appreciate it. I think, there will be people that are listening to this that are thinking about putting together a case for a speech analytics implementation, conversational analytics implementation. And it's about, okay, well, what would the pushback be? And I think if they're dealing with a leadership team, a board that are familiar with the Gen 2 solutions, not what's happened in the last year, that's the thing that's missing, right? It's really that difference that the AI power brings that then opens up, as you say, that world of possibilities, and therefore needs looking at again. And that ties into our next question really then. So, and that's the purpose of this really, is if you're a CX leader or a technology leader and you're thinking of making a business case for investment in this area, what do they need to be considering, and what shouldn't they be focusing on as well when it comes to what conversational analytics can do for them in their contact center?
That's a really good question. It's a little bit loaded knife, but it's a good question. So the one thing I would say, and this is not to do a disservice to people, but please leave the AHT alone. Everybody goes after AHT. Shrink the call time. No, come on. There's more to the world than AHT. Or interaction handle time rather than just average. So it's not just calls, interactions, whether it's a chat, etc. All of those things. But it's important to understand that interaction handle time from end to end. But it's not always appropriate to shrink it. This is the whole point. Is some things just take as long as they take. What you really want to look at are things like the quality of that call. You want to look at benefits where you've got immediate, where you can make immediate change, what people are asking for, what people are saying, what people are looking for, what are the commonalities. And that helps you to adjust your services, which then either allow you to create services that deflect calls, or create services that are automated, or to have agents preempted with information as a call comes in, and it will drive support agent support. So a lot of the co-pilot type stuff, etc., etc. But these analytic tools are really there to help you to analyze what's going on and then to create and adjust services appropriately. Not just, well, these calls take that long, these are the topics, because it allows you to create whole new routes into your organization or whole new services. Because there are things that, and this is why, you know, going back to the Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3 thing, this is why it's different. Because in the world now, rather than you just saying, okay, actually, you know, people are calling in about, you know, balance, or they're calling in about where's my X or where's my Y. The fact is there are several different things that come into that. And it may be that those services presented in a different way or created in a different way or preempting people will allow you to not just change how you interact with people, but may stop people interacting altogether. So by new service creation, effectively. So that goes to things like CSAT, yes, AHT, but quality, compliance. There's a whole raft of other things which rise the quality of a call or the quality of an interaction rather than just the length of it. So it's contextual, so it's appropriate, so that you have something that people will think, blimey, you know, it's almost that people are interpreting what you need before you need it, and that's really, really important. So yeah, it's not about AHT, it's about a whole raft of other things. So yeah, quality, attrition, even handle time, yeah, you can do, because just people are repeating the same things, you can shrink it, but it shouldn't be the absolute target. If you're going after change, or you're going after creating your return on investment, those CSAT models, those quality scores, customer effort, all of those things will move the dial as well as AHT. But AHT, yeah, it should be resultant, not a target in itself.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think there's some key points there for people to think about when they're building those business cases, things of where, you know, the as is and the to be journey, where they want it to be. And then that's the context they can be thinking about when they're looking at a speech analytics solution and how they think they can improve, you know, their contact center and their CX.
And just to cut across that, because I've got a really short memory, so I thought, oh, I know what I was going to say. So we did. We use a number of different analytics tools ourselves, because, you know, what we used to do before, if you're doing sort of a contact center assessment, you go in, you do a bunch of call listening, and I heard this, I heard that, etc. By taking one of these tools and pointing at a bunch of data, you know, whether it's 100 hours of calls or right across the board, the point is you have no clue what's going to come out. And on a couple of different occasions, we've pointed to this at customer data or client data with their customers, and said to customers, "Did you know this, 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 and this?" And we go, "No, we didn't. Is that a thing? That's a thing. People are saying this, and they didn't know. They absolutely didn't know." So look, people ringing up and saying this, so people are on your self-serve saying that, and these are the conversations that you're having. No clue, literally no clue. So that's where actually they were able to create either new routes or new flows into their organization that addressed those topics that were just completely lost, because it does not reflect in the IBR, it's not reflected in what they thought people were saying, because people go, oh, they want to say this, they want to do that, they want to know this, they want to know that. Whereas that, rather than actually listening to what people were actually saying and doing that across the 100%, because if you listen to 10%, you could miss it completely. Yeah, it's like I say, trying to map a whole town with the flashlight. Literally, but you need the lights on everywhere to see what's going.
I like that analogy, and it must be interesting for people trying to put together a business case, and they've got to account for that element of the unknown. You know, that what it will do for us is uncover things that we do not currently know that will enable us to generate an ROI. And that's my next question then. So we talked about it, and that's what it's going to boil down to for a lot of companies. And I'm seeing that when I'm speaking to business leaders at the moment: caution over spending money in the right areas. One of the things that we talked about before was, do you think people are properly considering the effort that is needed when they've implemented an analytics platform, what it's going to take to generate that ROI? And are they looking at the right things to start with when it comes to applying the effort, the time?
No, this is it's very much like this iterative or small iterative gain thing. People often think of it not as a one-shot thing, but yeah, we get the analytics tool, whack it in, tell us a bunch of stuff, we'll do that stuff, great, fix. It's not. And we developed within Artesia, we developed a methodology called ALTO, which is analyze, learn, test, observe, which is a circular format. That circular format meant that you're going through a cycle over a period of weeks where you're analyzing information, let the machine tell you. You can then test what you're finding and go, oh, actually, here's a fix for that. Test it, learn from it. Did it work? Did it not work? Did things get better? Did things get worse? And observe what's going on. So you go through that cycle again and again. And it's something where you need to measure that over maybe a period of a quarter or sort of half a year. So it's not a single month, it's not a single week. You really need to have a fixed set of activities where you are laser focused on that. So you do. I'm very much a big fan of the skunk work approach, where you've got a small team focused on this and go, okay, let's see what we can find in here. Using the tooling appropriately, not using or imposing your existing methodologies on it, but allowing the tool to tell you what it has to tell you, and then leveraging it systematically, going, actually, we found this, system's telling us that, what can we do to leverage that? And more importantly, at that point, you'll see whether actually there's any return in it, or whether it's like, oh, do you know what, I didn't know that, or there's no point in dealing with this particular issue, or it's a non-issue. But the point is that it takes a robust focus on how you're dealing with it, not dip in, do some stuff, dip out, oh, here's a report. It's actually physically changing your business processes, how agents are engaged, because it doesn't just tell you what customers are asking for, it tells you what agents are going through, it tells you all sorts of things in all sorts of places. And actually, if you're looking at metadata as well, it will also tell you, actually, do you know what, hell bells, he cut these, I know I said don't focus on handle times, but suddenly this particular platform just does not respond, or this is not providing the right information, or the information is out of date, etc., so those sorts of things. So yeah, to summarize, it does require robust focus. People should focus on it not just for a short period of time. You should consider a long-term or a medium-term project of at least 6 months, where you're slowly getting those results, but it's minor changes on that dial that by the end of a 6-month period, you've actually moved it a lot further than you'd expected to have done.
Yeah, I like that. These are major projects, and you talked about processes as well, and that's something that a business then has got to be prepared to look at, not just apply technology over the top to the wrong processes and expect magic. And I think we've done quite well, because we got this far into the call without saying NPS yet, but it does have to raise its head.
I was going to mention that, yeah.
Yeah, it does have to raise its head, and I'm interested in as an expert in the area, I'm interested in your opinion. How do you think a good conversational analytics platform matched with the right focused internal processes compares to NPS in terms of understanding a company's customer base?
Probably going to get a shot for this. I'm not a big fan of NPS.
Me neither. So we're on the same team there. We'll get
we'll go down together. So,
yeah.
So for me, I think these tools are much more accurate in what they. So a net promoter score is because I can't remember the history around NPS, but the point is that these tools have the capabilities to tell you the actuality of what's gone on. Now, whether that person will promote you, etc., I don't know. The point is, by making services easier, by making services more accessible, by making services lower effort or predictive, so people don't even have to do things. Now, if you're going through a service like that, or you're experiencing a service like that, you're going, that was super simple. In fact, actually, you just go, oh, it's easy, yeah. And if a service is bad, you'll tell 100 different people they don't go anywhere near it. But if a service is really good, you probably only tell a few, because at the end of the day, you'll go, oh, that was really good. But you will make a much larger impact on the people you're talking to because they go, well, he seemed really enthused about that. Was that really that good? Try it, honestly, it'll change your life. And those sorts of things. And so NPS, I wouldn't say it's outdated. It has its place. It's used as a metric right across the industry. But I think it needs to be refined, and how you come up with, is this going to move my business along? And I think these tools work in a slightly different way, well, in a completely different way, because they work on actuality. What happened? What can you do? What are people saying? What are people doing? What are people feeling? Rather than, okay, yeah, tick, 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 yeah, NPS score of blah. Okay, that's so for me, it's better. I think it's the way of the future. That probably sounds too much, but yeah, things are going to change.
Yeah, I'm certainly hearing that, and I think there's more advocates out there for a change from NPS because of its limitations, because of the increase in capability from AI and the tools that are now implementing it. Not least in this Gen 3 conversational analytics space that we're talking about. And so I think there's more and more experts that are starting to say to companies, NPS isn't the be all and end all, and if we want to drive change and improvement, not just for our customers but for our agents, we need to be looking at actuality, what is actually happening, and how we can affect that. And that's what we're talking about. And so as a final question then, if people have listened to this and thought, okay, great, I understand kind of a bit more about what I need to be looking at to put this business case together, how much effort it's going to take when we land it, if my board, if my CEO says, but we've got NPS, why don't we just focus on that, what the differences are, and what makes this stand out as the way forward in the future. For you, are there any standout tools in the analytics space, in your opinion? And I'm sure there are many. And as you said, quite rightly, you're independent. But I think ultimately, would you say to people, this is worth looking at, that's worth looking at, and considering? There's going to be different right answers for every business. Let's just say that as well. But what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because even sort of the determination or the definition of an analytic tool is changing, because a lot of the self-serve platforms have a degree of analysis built into them to understand sentiment or vulnerability, etc., based on what's going on. And as you know, the world is changing rapidly. It's only a year and whatever since the advent of ChatGPT, etc., and everybody's sort of leaning heavily on it and kind of doing it and kind of not. But certainly for me, in the last year or so, you've had a number of different tools turn up, and a number of different tools that have been upgraded in their capabilities. And certainly, I think probably NICE are one of the ones with their new Enlighten platform. Now, a lot of that is yet to I've yet to see it used in anger everywhere, but certainly from what I've seen, it's one of the first, or one of the few true sort of what I would call Gen 3 platforms that work quite well. The platform we're involved with, which was Sentient Machines, which are an early adopter or an early creator of a true AI platform, where they've had, and that's run by pretty much scientists, a lady called Danica. They are sort of boss beings with great big heads. But the point is that in terms of how the platform works, true AI, intuitive, real time, generative based, but more importantly, in terms of the insights, you don't have to ask it anything. Just turn it on, let it go, see what comes out, and that gives you the clues about where things are going. And both of those tool sets, or whether you're looking at, say, people like Awaken AI or even AWS, there's a huge amount. The difference with AWS is you don't necessarily, you can create a lot of stuff. You've got a lot of stuff that you can create, but you have to create it. What you want is a suite of products that are usable straight up, so you don't get into development, for example. So yeah, I would say NICE. I would say Sentient. AWS is a strong one as well, because they're doing a lot of stuff, but it's not necessarily a done and finished complete suite as you would have it. But yeah, it's even by the time we've had this conversation and a month from now, 2 months from now, there'll be something else that comes out. But yeah, things are changing rapidly.
Well, I think that the Sabio Disrupt event the other week, again, it was mentioned that we're in a time when the pace of technological change for humankind has never been faster. It's exponential at the moment, and so and I certainly think that customer experience is one of the most dynamic marketplaces, because it does seem to be an early adopter of these technologies, and so that's why it was surprising to me when I was at that Future of Customer Contact event that so many businesses actually are not implementing conversational analytics yet. But I think they are going to need to now to keep up, because we're going to see a larger gap between those that do and those that don't.
Yeah, and I think actually things have moved away from how people look at technology, because it was all about sort of cost saving. How can we do it shorter, faster, hand time, no breaks for agents. How do they go to the toilet? So it's now around the quality of that interaction, about the human centricity of what we do, the repeatability and sustainability, taking into account vulnerable people, etc. But also the quality, and also compliance, because compliance is a nightmare now in terms of what you can do, can't do, can't say, etc. What you can record, can't record, what you've got to forget, etc. as well. So all of those things that have changed the landscape enormously from what they were before. But certainly for me, I think, things are changing, things are getting better. I think there are huge opportunities, certainly for organizations that focus on these technologies, that can make a huge difference to a bottom line. In terms of that ROI, I think the ROI is probably a lot larger than people think, and we're still hampered by the old Gen 1 platforms. So it'll save you a fortune, 25% of your calls, and we get the AHD to nothing. It's like, well, you can't. You've got to talk to somebody. So unless you can deflect everything and do it completely automated, and that may come for certain things, but it's the world is changing.
And there's a headline to wrap this on. The ROI is actually probably far bigger than you think. Open with that for the people that are putting their business cases together. That's the opening statement, and it's probably true, because we're comparing conversational analytics, AI-driven conversational analytics platforms, with the speech analytics platforms of the Gen 1 past, and they are different animals that do different things.
And sort of one other thing is that the processing of these things is so much more powerful, and the cost of that processing has dropped. Whereas, because we're in the cloud era now, whereas before that you were on the cusp of sort of hosted, and yes, you still got GPUs and various other things, and that's getting more expensive, but it's still relatively cost effective to do a lot of this stuff, and to do it well, and in multiple languages across different zones, etc. So there's all sort of benefit where you can hub this stuff into one place and really make a difference. If you've got a multinational company, you want to apply that analysis across, French, German, Italian, Spanish, whatever, Serbo-Croat, then you can do it and bring it down to a central team that's focused that can help everybody.
There you go. Well,
returns plenty.
As always, I really appreciate your time. You and I had another one of these chats about a year ago, following Sabio Disrupt last year. I'll put a link to that video somewhere. I'm not that good at the YouTube stuff yet, where I remember where the video goes, but it'll be on here somewhere. Go and check that out. That was about diversity and inclusion in the contact center space, and its value and importance. Still very, very relevant, still being discussed this year as well, and will be for a long time going forward, I'm sure. But again, Don, thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll do another interview in a year's time.
No worries. Brilliant. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Don.
All right. Cheers, Ian. Thanks. Okay, bye.